Bonjour. Today we are gathered here in the press gallery to shed light on the ongoing cultural genocide taking place in Tibet. What the CCP calls the Tibetan Autonomous Region, though in reality there is neither autonomy nor freedom. We are honored to welcome Sikyon Penpa Tsering, the President of the Central Tibetan Administration, known to many as the Tibetan government in exile, headquartered in Dharamsala, India. We also are pleased to have representatives from all three main political parties with us today. In addition, we are joined by respected expert Dr. Charles Burton, who will close out the press conference before questions from the media. This year, 2025, is one of both celebration and caution. In July, we marked the 90th birthday of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, a global leader who has always advocated for freedom and democracy through peaceful means. His message of truth, compassion, and universality continues to inspire millions, even as he remains a constant irritant to the Chinese Communist Party. Here on Canadian soil, the CCP has sanctioned Dr. Burton and the CTA, and also Tibetans. This is yet another reminder of China's transnational repression here inside Canada. On Tuesday, Canada marked Truth and Reconciliation Day, a time to reflect on the suffering of Indigenous Canadians, including the 150,000 children forced into residential schools over more than a century. They were made to surrender their culture, their language, and their beliefs. This amounted to cultural genocide. Today, the CCP has taken time and the same model and applied it in even greater intensity in both Tibet and Xinjiang. There's nearly 1 million Tibetan children that are removed each year and into these state-run schools, designed to erase their culture and their faith. This is what Sikyon Penpa Tsering is here to tell parliamentarians about and to call for collective action. Canada can no longer blindly negotiate trade deals with a nation that is committed to the cultural and religious genocide of Tibetans, Uyghurs, and the 50 other minorities inside the borders of China. Without further ado, I am honored to introduce the President of the Central Tibetan Administration, and after all, Tibet is Tibet. Thank you.
Want me to speak first? Brothers and sisters of Canada, I came on Monday, and Tuesday happened to be the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation of what happened in Canada with the residential schools, with the theme of every child matters, every child do matter. And Canada has gone through these kind of experiences in your history, and you have now realized that this was the wrong thing to do. And the events that were organized on Tuesday, for me personally, it was quite relieving that the government of Canada and the people of Canada realized the truth of what happened, recognized the truth, and then tried to reconcile the indifferences or the differences that were there, and then move forward. Of course, what happened in the past cannot be undone, but we can definitely look forward to a better future. I really appreciate the Canadian government and the people of Canada for recognizing the truth and then willing to reconcile and to live in harmony with each other. But unfortunately, of course, this will also help heal the mental wounds of people who have gone through all these sufferings. Unfortunately, the same thing is happening in Tibet today. When you ask the Chinese government why colonial-style boarding schools in Tibet, and they point out to Canada and say, what did Canada do to its First Nation people, or the Americans with the natives, or the Australians with the Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders, or the New Zealanders with the Maoris, and even Sami people in the Scandinavian region. So what they say and what they mean is they know what these countries did, and now they are deliberately, knowingly doing it to the Tibetans to eradicate our language, our identity, all our language and religion, which forms a bedrock of Tibetan identity. Just to give you an overview, we have never ever been subjugated by any other foreign power, including China, till Communist China invaded Tibet. And we have a very rich civilization. Tibet is located in a very strategic location in Central Asia with borders with so many countries, and we lived in peace with all our neighbors through the centuries. The plateau of Tibet came up as a tectonic shift because of the tectonic shift between the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate, and it's the highest plateau in the world. We always lived in the mountains. The average altitude of Tibet is about 16,000 feet. When you think about Tibet, it's not easy to come to travel to Tibet, or it's not easy for Tibetans also to travel out of Tibet. So we remained isolated for very long, but we have maintained our values. Tibetans are devout Buddhists for the last 1,300 years. We have a language that is one among the 15 oldest languages in this world today, and we have a dictionary with 223 volumes that speaks for the importance of Tibetan language. The geostrategic importance of Tibet is not only important for Tibet in that region, but for the whole region. And then the environmental importance of Tibet is also not only for the Tibetans, but for the whole region and for the whole world. And we have a culture that promotes peace and nonviolence and harmony. And these messages are manifested in the form of His Holiness to the world. Of course, we lost our country. It was a bad thing for us. But the world gained the Dalai Lama. And as Dean mentioned just now, we just celebrated His Holiness' 90th birthday. And His Holiness is one of the very few people who have been honored by the Canadian government as an honorary citizen. We are thankful to the Governor General for sending a message on His Holiness' 90th birthday, and I'm sure everybody by now knows that His Holiness has decided to continue the Ganden Podang Trust of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who will also be responsible for choosing his reincarnations in the future, and His Holiness has also confirmed that his lineage will continue. But one thing the international community has to understand is when we talk about reincarnation, that happens only after the death of the person. So His Holiness keeps saying, I will live for another 2 decades and more. Since this Tibetan New Year, His Holiness says, I'll live up to 130 years of age. And I keep telling the Chinese, this message is for you, because you are waiting for this Dalai Lama to die. But His Holiness keeps saying that he will live long. So let us see whether His Holiness the Dalai Lama outlives the Communist Party, or the Communist Party outlives His Holiness. And I also want to leave you with this thought that some of my friends say the dragon is biting at us. So I tell them, dragon at one time was very weak. Who made the dragon so powerful to be able to bite at you? It's the United States, it's the European Union, it's Japan, it's Taiwan. All the countries who have been involved in making China for what it's today. But now, knowing that the dragon is biting at you, if you still keep feeding the dragon, then whose fault is it? I think there are plans for recalibration of relations with China by the Canadian government and improved trade relations. But if you look at the 2024 numbers, then you can see that the total trade of 87 billion, Canada exports only 30 billion and imports 57 billion. So you have a trade deficit, huge trade deficit, 87 billion. So you have a trade deficit of 57 billion with the Chinese. And with improved trade relations, now you will have to watch whether you are going to buy more from China or you're going to sell more to China, which is beneficial to Canada, not buying more from China and enriching China to carry out all the things they have been doing with Belt and Road initiatives, creating dead economies, and exacerbating the whole political situation in the region. Because of China's activities, defense expenses of all the countries in the region have increased. So China should take responsibility for this and stop its hegemonistic and colonial mindset and give freedom to its people. And in this 21st century, everybody should be able to live in dignity and in freedom, and that's all we are asking for through the middle way. We are not asking for independence or separation from China, but we are willing to live with the Chinese people. We have lived with the Chinese for centuries, Even if we don't have an Indian mythological god like Hanuman, who's supposed to have the power to lift mountains. So we don't have a Hanuman to lift Tibet out of that place and put it somewhere in the Atlantic or Pacific near Canada. Whenever we get to go back, we have to live with the Chinese. We have to live with the Nepalese, Bhutanese, Indians as our neighbors. So why not live in peace with each other as neighbors? And that is all we are asking for, nothing more. And there's nobody that we can appeal to. The UN is the most undemocratic institution in the world. It cannot implement its own resolutions. That is why we reach out to governments like Canada, whose foreign policy pillars are based on Canada's security, prosperity, and values. So Canada's values are rooted in democracy, in freedom, and that is what we are asking your help for from the government, and also some financial assistance for education, because education is being impacted in Tibet. And if this goes on, the colonial-style boarding schools in Tibet goes on for another 2-3 decades, it's going to be very, very detrimental and consequential for the Tibetans, because one whole generation of Tibetans would be turned into Chinese. And that is a very, very frightening consequence that we are looking at. And since you have stopped the residential schools and are trying to make up for it, and please make sure that it does not happen in any other part of the world, including Tibet. Thank you. Oh, sorry. You want to go?
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'll be brief today. Just wanted to be here along with colleagues from other parties to support Sikyong and his important message. I had the honor of meeting His Holiness the Dalai Lama shortly after I was first elected in January of 2016. And what I wanted to ask him in particular was what he saw Canada's role being in this struggle for freedom and justice. What was the particularly Canadian role and contribution? And he spoke to me about how Canada can and should share from its own experience in its advocacy for human rights around the world. That is, we have experienced things, we have gone through things, we have learned things as a country over the course of our history, and we have developed responses to those things. We spoke, for instance, about how Tibetans' advocacy for a middle way approach, for genuine autonomy within the framework of the Chinese Constitution, is a proposal that is similar to the kind of federal model that we have operating in Canada, where there is measures of genuine autonomous decision-making that outside the federal government. So it is in our pursuit of truth and reconciliation, as well as in our federal structure, that we can share with the rest of the world how these experiences have made us stronger as a nation, and are things that can be learned from and used in other contexts. We continue to advocate for the people of Tibet, as well as for religious freedom, and I want to add my voice to the call for respecting the religious freedom of the Tibetan community and the ability of the Tibetan Buddhist community to autonomously make decisions about religious affairs, and that it is not the right or role of any government to dictate matters of religious succession, and that the Canadian government should reaffirm that in its own statements, that these should be decisions made autonomously by the Tibetan Buddhist community according to their own traditions, and not be dictated to by the CCP. So thank you for being here and for noting this discussion. And I want to recognize again Sikyong's work and his important advocacy, and second all of the points he made about the stance Canada needs to take and the actions that's required. Thank you.
Bonjour tout le monde. Aujourd'hui, je pense que c'est important comme conférence de presse. Présentement, le régime du Parti communiste chinois s'en prend à des enfants. On sait tout le tort qu'ils ont fait à travers les années au Tibet, bien entendu, mais là, on parle d'enfants. On veut effacer leur culture, leur langue, leur identité. Silkong l'a dit, à quel point la langue tibétaine est importante, évidemment, pour la culture, mais l'identité même du peuple tibétain. Et aujourd'hui, ce régime-là s'en prend directement aux enfants pour effacer carrément à travers une génération une culture puis une civilisation millénaire. Donc, on a un devoir ici, et malheureusement, la réponse du gouvernement présentement, elle est inquiétante. Elle est inquiétante pourquoi? Parce qu'on sent que M. Carney vise à se rapprocher de la Chine, à atténuer les relations entre les deux pays pour des raisons strictement économiques. Si on regarde présentement qui est le secrétaire parlementaire du ministre du Développement international, c'est le même secrétaire parlementaire que le ministre du Commerce international. Donc, on voit présentement la vision que ce gouvernement-là a présentement en matière de droits humains, et c'est très inquiétant. Je pense qu'on a le devoir, et surtout avec ce qui s'est passé dans l'histoire du Canada, on a l'obligation de réagir, de porter cette voix-là des peuples qui sont présentement attaqués de toutes parts, comme le peuple tibétain. On l'a vu, bien entendu, avec les pensionnats autochtones. On l'a vu aussi au début du 20e siècle en Ontario ou au Manitoba, alors que le français était interdit dans les écoles. Donc, on sait les résultats que ça a donné, on sait l'effacement culturel que ça a donné. Et présentement, c'est en train de se passer là. C'est documenté, c'est vu, c'est su, c'est connu. Et nous, la réponse du gouvernement, c'est de se rapprocher du Parti communiste chinois. Je pense que c'est une erreur. Aujourd'hui, ce qu'on fait, c'est un appel au gouvernement. On aimerait qu'il nous explique sa position par rapport à ce qui est en train de se passer au Tibet, ce qui est en train de se passer d'ailleurs aussi au Turkestan oriental, et avec le nouveau projet de loi de Xi Jinping qui veut prendre l'exemple des écoles des Chinois, des pensionnats chinois au Tibet et au Xinjiang, et qui veut prendre cet exemple-là et l'appliquer sur tout le territoire chinois aux autres minorités présentement. Et c'est un projet de loi qui est sur la table du Parti communiste chinois présentement, on en parle. Donc, il y a un sérieux problème. Il faut absolument que, oui, toute la communauté internationale soit au courant de ce qui se passe, mais elle le sait. Et il faut arrêter de fermer les yeux à partir de maintenant. Et je remercie bien sûr toute la délégation qui est venue avec nous aujourd'hui. C'est un grand honneur de pouvoir participer à cette conférence de presse. Merci.
Hi there, I'm Kareem Bardizi, the Member of Parliament for Tayakan Parkdale High Park, which along with the ridings in Etobicoke Centre and Etobicoke Lakeshore are the homes to the largest Tibetan Canadian communities in Canada. Je veux remercier mes collègues du Bloc et des conservateurs, et ensuite mes collègues James Maloney et Yvonne Baker et Elizabeth May du Parti vert qui ont rencontré le Sikyong hier. And I want to thank the Sikyong and the Central Tibetan Administration, as well as the Canada-Tibet Committee and the Office of Tibet in the United States for this work. As has been said up here already, language and culture are key to identity and to cultural survival. And when the language is taken away, there's a real threat to the people. And as you know from what the Sikyong has mentioned, these residential schools are unfortunately growing in numbers. There's a recent report by the Tibet Action Institute, which now identifies that children as early as 4 years old are being taken away into residential schools in the Tibetan Autonomous Region in China. And we know that when you separate the language and you separate parents and children, that cultural alienation happens and that the culture is threatened. And this is something that we stand firmly against. And as MP Genuis mentioned, there are lessons that we have, and there are lessons that are recently being learned in Canada. And so that idea that we can progress and respect each other's cultures is something that is very important to us. I just attended recently the launch of a Canadian film which won honorable mention at the Toronto International Film Festival. It was a Tibetan Canadian film that was filmed almost entirely in Tibetan and took place entirely in the Tibetan language. And the Tibetan Canadian communities in Canada have a rich, vibrant culture that is rooted in language, in food, in worship, in the very central role of His Holiness the Dalai Lama as a spiritual leader. And these residential schools are getting in the way of and really threatening Tibetan culture in the Tibetan Autonomous Region of China. And so I really support the Sikyong and his work to run, to be focusing attention on this issue, and perhaps more broadly, the Central Tibetan Administration as one of the great democratic beacons of the 21st century, a government in exile that has a functioning parliament and providing services outside the Tibetan Autonomous Region to tens of thousands of Tibetans. And it is a great tribute to democracy, to the guidance and spiritual leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and to the enduring power of the Tibetan language and culture, which needs to be preserved, and which means these residential schools. We hope that the Chinese government will pay attention to some of these entreaties so that, as the Sikyong mentioned, Tibetans in the Tibetan Autonomous Region can live their culture and live autonomously.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Charles Burton. I'm a senior advisor to the Canada-Tibet Committee. It's a great honor for me to be here with His Excellency, the Sikyong of the Central Tibetan Administration, and the three MPs who have put considerable effort into speaking out on behalf of the Tibetan cause, and Mr. Baxendale, who has published in his Optimum Press many books allowing Canadians to better understand the nature of the Chinese Communist Party. Now, I do share Mr. Brunel Ducept's concerns about the direction that Canada is taking with regard to China, and whether our desire to seek greater access to Chinese markets to compensate for our loss of market share in the United States will mean that we will become tacit, giving tacit consent to what the Chinese Communist Party is doing in Tibet and elsewhere. In Malaysia in early July, Foreign Minister Anita Anand said that it's important for us to revisit our policy, not only in the Indo-Pacific, but generally speaking, to ensure that we are focusing not only on the values we have historically adhered to. Then we had a meeting in August of the Canada-China Joint Economic and Trade Commission, which is all about economics and trade and really nothing else. And the Chinese Communist Party paper, the Global Times, their foreign policy mouthpiece, wrote an article saying, "China willing to work with Canada to expand trade and economic cooperation, senior Chinese official." And the report says that China wants Canada to take immediate steps to correct its erroneous practices, maintain policy autonomy, meaning from the United States, and then, listen to this, constructive approaches and pragmatic actions to manage differences. Well, that's the constructive approaches and pragmatic actions, which seems to be a kind of keyword here, because on September the 26th, the Chinese embassy hosted their celebration of China's National Day, which was yesterday, October the 1st. And I was quite surprised at the large Canadian delegation, well beyond the demands of protocol, that attended, including our current ambassador to Beijing, Jennifer May, and the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, David Morrison, and a large number of China people from GAC. I don't think we needed to be quite so celebratory as we were. The Chinese ambassador gave a standard speech about how it's important that whenever both sides stick to the principle of right perception, mutual respect, seeking common ground while putting aside differences and mutual benefit, the bilateral relations will move forward smooth and achieve fruitful outcomes. When the preceding code is not followed, the bilateral relations will take a blow or even derail. It sounds like a bit of a threat. Seeking common ground while putting aside difference, 求同存异, is a standard formula for China requiring that Canada not engage on human rights, espionage, interference in Canadian democracy, or China's suppression of dissent in Hong Kong, the military threat to Taiwan, expansionist claims in the South China Sea, and on our concerns over Tibet in exchange for China promising increasing access to its vast market for Canadian commodities. But what was the response of our Deputy Foreign Minister? And he said, I think the warm words of the ambassador tonight have echoed those Prime Minister Carney has made, very clear that his desire to recalibrate Canada-China relations and to advance our bilateral ties in, wait for it, a pragmatic and constructive manner. So our Deputy Foreign Minister of GAC was quoting from the Chinese Communist Party Foreign Affairs journal, the Global Times. Well, I mean, this really seems to be about how we're going to seek common ground while putting aside difference. But the concern for me is, are we going to, in effect, give tacit consent for Chinese activity in Tibet? There was a statement by the governments of Britain, France, and UK about our concerns over the succession to His Holiness Dalai Lama, which Dalai Lama would Canada recognize. We were not there, nor has our Prime Minister made any direct statement on Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong, nor has he made any direct statement on the schools where the Tibetan children are losing their cultural identity in gross violation of important international covenants that Canada has ascribed to, like the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. Forget about the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So I would urge our government to take a stance where we can do a cost-free, frank statement to the Chinese government that what they are doing to Tibetans in Tibet is a violation of international human rights and humanitarian rights of man, and that we ought to make clear where we stand on this. And if that means that China will buy less of our agricultural commodities, I think stressing our Canadian values is more important than a promise of short-term economic gain. Thank you very much.